has provided for us. He gives us everything we need. It's out there. And actually, you're going to suffer worse just sitting around in the system. I think overall, you're going to have less peace. You're going to have less quiet. You're going to have less love. You're going to have less connection. You're going to have less everything. And at the end of the day, you're still going to suffer and die. The
Like
system's not.
what we man.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. I didn't know some of those things about you.
Yeah, but what would be your advice for someone that has actually went and done that? I know you did that one summertime or whatever. You actually went off completely off grid, and you were surviving off land. Like, what would be the best advice that you could give someone, like for a city folk like me?
You gotta talk to people who've been living like that, like that's their life, like that's what they're about, and they know so much that I learned from these folks that are like they're already doing these things, they've been doing these things, that's just normal for them, and they have all these skills and knowledge and wisdom, and most of them are pretty like humble and quiet people, out in the country or something. And you got to talk to people, and you got to search these things out, and you got to try to make connections with people, and work with them and work together with them and learn from them as much as you can. That's been my experience, because like for me, being from the city, just being like just an apartment dweller for most of my life, and then just having this incredible like impulse to just like get out of here, and I don't want any more of this, and just thrusting myself out there like that. That's what I learned, was you have to really try to find people on that page, and they're out there, they're all over the place, and they're in the real world. A lot of them are not on the internet. They already left the internet. You know what I mean? They already turned their cell phones off. They're already walking that walk, And I learned a lot from people like that, and I try to continue to. I would say that's really important.
But you have actually tested those waters per se. You actually have experience of best of both worlds, because again, you're a city boy, but if I'm not mistaken, you actually had that experience of that one, summer where you did that. You went, into a tent, and you did all that.
Yeah, I mean, I live outside now pretty much every summer, so I do that whenever it's warm. Like right now, I'm not fixing to be in the city much longer if I can help it. So I would say it's pretty comes pretty naturally to just live with the land when it's warm.
So
No.
it's not as hard as we think it is.
Yes, exactly. I mean, people have this learned helplessness, like fear programming, like, and a lot of it I think comes from watching television. You watch these like survival freak out programs, and it's just totally the wrong way to look at everything. God has provided for us. He gives us everything we need. It's out there. And actually, you're going to suffer worse just sitting around in the system. I think overall, you're going to have less peace. You're going to have less quiet. You're going to have less love. You're going to have less connection. You're going to have less everything. And at the end of the day, you're still going to suffer and die. The system's not.
What we are doing now is harder, man.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like they have us convinced that we have some sense of security here, but it's an illusion. It's all a big illusion, And yeah, of course, if you're not wise about things, it can be like out of the frying pan into the pot. Like you can jump out of the city into the woods and get eaten by a bear, right? So you don't want to be unwise, but at the same time, like people focus too much on that sort of thing. That's not, nature is more like a harmony. It's not like this violent struggle to the death all the time. That's this Darwinian kind of thinking. It's not really like that. It's a harmony. Things work together. The earth, the soil, the plants, the wind, the birds. It's all in a communication with each other. They're all talking to each other. It's like we are the ones who are disconnected. We are the ones who are lost. The birds know what's going on. The
Right.
animals know what's going on. We go out there, we're like, they're looking at us and they think, wow, this person's like totally blind, totally deaf. They don't even know what's going on. Like they're walking through the middle of the woods. They don't hear us talking. They don't hear us
Right.
talking to them. They don't, it's like, what's going, we're the ones who are off,
Completely off, man. I want to share a quick, interesting story to you that just popped up into my mind. There was this guy, and is this guy in Russia. His name is German Gorlikov. He's a diehard Christian, but like not like the modern Christian. Anyway, he studies old scriptures himself. But the crazy story. So in the 90s, he becomes an oligarch, and is at one point is supposed to be running for president. Spends most of his billions on the campaign. He was living in the best neighborhood in Moscow. And all of a sudden, after he spent all his money, everybody turned on him. He didn't win the elections. Putin won the elections that year. All of a sudden, he finds himself out of his mansion and into the wild with his wife and 2 children, living in a tent, right? So they lived in a tent for 6 months, and then within a year, he was able to, because in Russia they have this program where they give you an acre of land or whatever. But anyway, within a couple of years, not only did he adjust, but he built a community of people alike around him that are living almost like an Amish. There is no electricity, and they make their own bread, and they grow their own food, and they have their own, cows and chicks, like completely self-sufficient, man.
Yeah, that's really interesting story. I'd even like to read about that or something.
I'll send you because
Yeah,
this was a guy that was so caught up in the in the material, and he has his children completely disconnected from any schools, from any system. They ride horses. They read all the ancient scriptures that they can find. They don't read any modern literature, no poetry, no movies, none of that stuff. Completely disconnected. And actually, his whole idea is of how we will take a stand as a people. He says we have to cut off all the world's electricity.
That's interesting.
So the world can go at least one day without electricity, man.
Yeah, man. I agree with that in a large degree. I honestly try not. I don't even use electricity when I'm out there for a good part of the year. I just use hand tools. I try to only use hand tools. Yeah, and I got a nice little. There's some woods around there, cedar forest, so you can use the wood for whatever you want to make. You put a little wood stove in there. You got heat. But like I said, it's all, it's a lot easier than it seems as long as it's warm.
So
Because-
are you my brother telling me that nature welcomed you home with open arms?
Yeah, something like that. I would say that, nature, I would say, it's like God's wisdom. That's what nature is, It's like, it can be a loving embrace. You don't look at it like a hostile enemy. That's the wrong way to look at it. Because I would say that's the Romans kind of look at it that way. Like you have to go to war with the land. You have to tame the land. You have to, kill the animals. You have to put them under yokes. You have to plow the ground. You have to just fight and struggle with it all. And it doesn't have to be that way. Even with farming and things like that, we're kind of, most people are stuck in a certain way of looking at how to raise plants, and it's totally, most of it's totally unnecessary. You're fighting with nature, and these plants, we don't grow them, they pretty much grow themselves. It's just we have to understand what they want and what kind of laws they operate in. If you kind of observe the laws of the forest and the laws of like a field, and how the soil interacts with the plants and the patterns there, and you just apply that to your garden or whatever, it can pretty much grow itself, and our food can largely grow itself. And like, I'm not just saying that just theoretically, like I'm saying that a large part out of experience now, you know.
Wow.
Like, yeah, that's something I'd like to talk to you about at some point in the future, because I have it's something like a project I'd like to do, just in terms of like wild edible plants. Something I do, but maybe putting it in a video format, and just you know what I mean, because some people have expressed interest in that, so I thought, you know, I could also share it with you.
I'm down, man.
Yeah, you can see what I like to do, one of the things I have interest in, and I think it kind of dovetails with all these kind of topics we're talking about right now. I think I've always found that the food is like a central thing, because the way I look at it, you build a house once, you get your clothing once or twice a year, but every day you got to get food for yourself or for someone else, right? So the food becomes a daily thing, and that has to be a focus for just practical reasons.
Food